I'm John FK Mulder. Some of my closest friends know me just as Fricky. But it's really great to be part of this really amazing effort by the organizers of the International Polyglot Conference to bring some excitement, but also to share of my own experience in the different languages of our world, specifically of South Africa, but also some other parts of the world. I'm speaking to you under this section, My World. So take this as an invitation into my world and also to a degree into my own life. Speaking to you about where I come from, just a little bit of my own story. Then I would like to proceed further to the post-1994 linguistic reality of my own country, South Africa, as you can see from the flag behind me here. From there, I would like to continue to introduce to you the linguistic richness of South Africa, of my own country. After that, I would like to address the leaders of my own continent in the isiZulu language and speak to them about the importance of reviving the mother tongue, something that is so needed in Africa. And then lastly, to you joining us at the Polyglot Conference this year of 2020, October, I would like to extend an invitation to you, fellow polyglots and fellow students of languages, to come and enjoy the great linguistic richness of my own country and also of this very, very interesting and vibrant continent of Africa. So, let me start out with a bit of my own story and how I came to be a polyglot speaking well. I'm not where some of the great names of this conference where they are, but I speak more than 10 languages and I read more than that. Some of the classical languages, some European languages, though my focus is specifically and my love really lies with the languages of my own continent where I was born in South Africa. So, about my own life, when it comes to languages, I usually start with high school. I was in high school in the 80s, and I had a very bad relationship with my maths teacher. And so one day he looked at me and he said, "I can't believe it that somebody with such an IQ gives me such marks for mathematics." I went to speak to some of my family members, I spoke to friends, and they said, "You know, you can matriculate without maths." I said, "Are you serious?" They said, "Yes, take German." Okay, wow. I thought, okay, skipping mathematics and going for German is going to do it for me. And so I skipped maths. This was in high school in the 80s, and so I took German. And I think this is really where everything started for me when it comes to being multilingual, though having been brought up to speak Afrikaans, that's my own mother tongue. And television was introduced in South Africa only in the mid-70s, and but my own generation, we grew up with television, and very often the most interesting stories and videos were in English. And so many of us don't remember when we learned to speak English. We just kind of grew up in a bilingual way, though our deepest thoughts and you might also add our most solemn moments of seriousness would return to our own mother tongue, in my case then Afrikaans. So anyway, I matriculated with in 1989, then with 3 languages, German being one of them. and I wasn't sure what to go and study. And remember now, this was still during the apartheid years, pre-1994. Went for what we call here psychometric tests. Okay, what should you study? What should I go and do? And so the suggestion was made after I did these tests. Fricky, why don't you just go for do a BA languages? Thought about it and thought, okay, let's go for it. Okay, I'll do BA languages, and I started out with Afrikaans, English, isiZulu, and some other subjects. Now, to my great surprise, this was in the year 1990, the year that they released Nelson Mandela Madiba, as we know him in South Africa, from prison. I started out with the languages at university, Afrikaans, English, and isiZulu, and to my great surprise, Sawubona, the greeting in the isiZulu language, changed it all for me. It just changed everything for me. I greeted people on campus. There was a smallish group of Sotho-speaking, isiZulu-speaking people on campus, and I engaged with Sawubona or Sanbonani. Interestingly, the literal meaning of this isiZulu greeting of Sawubona is "we have seen you." Okay, so the literal meaning of when we greet in isiZulu, if you greet a person in the singular, if you greet one person, you literally say, "we have seen you." Okay, which gives you some understanding also into the culture of our people in South Africa. To be recognized is so important. To greet people is so important. Not greeting is very bad, very bad. Saying Sawubona, we have seen you, is recognizing the personhood of the person you're speaking to. So Sawubona changed it all for me. I grew up in a culture that was what you might call monocultural, monolingual, our own culture, our own cultural organizations, our own church, and so forth. But greeting my fellow South Africans with Sawubona opened a door for me that brought an experience into my life where I felt myself pulled into a different world. And to be very honest with you, it was a world that I did not expect to experience. But it really changed everything for me, really everything. I started speaking isiZulu. I bought myself a radio, like an electronic radio, and I set my radio to the 11 then yet to be official languages of South Africa. So in the 90s, there were talks of, listen, earlier under the previous political system, there were 2 official languages of South Africa, Afrikaans and English, and then in the areas that some refer to as the Bantustans, you had like the specific colloquial languages of isiZulu, isiXhosa, isiSwati, Sepedi, Setswana, Tshivenda, Xitsonga, and so forth. But the country as a whole had 2 official languages, Afrikaans and English, and everybody was talking about the future of our country, and they said, listen, we will be moving towards 11 official languages. And so buying that radio, I set my radio to the 11 yet to be official languages of the entire country, and I started listening to isiZulu. I started listening to isiXhosa. I started listening to isiSwati. I started listening to isiNdebele. I started listening to Sepedi. I started listening to Setswana. I started listening to Sesotho. I started listening to Tshivenda, and I started listening to Xitsonga, and also to my own mother tongue, Afrikaans, and then also what some people today refer to as Globish. Okay, this is going to sound harsh, but what some refer to as the language murderer. Well, the one I'm speaking at the moment, English. So I set my radio to these 11 languages, the 11 official languages of our country, and so an amazing journey started for me in becoming multilingual. And I still haven't recovered. Even today, 2020, connecting with people, getting to know people from all over the world, and it's really a great joy, and a wonderful gift to experience in speaking multiple languages and connecting with people all over the world. Just shortly, my wife and I, we embarked on a journey in 1999 and lived in Eastern Europe for about 4.5 years, where we learned to speak the Russian language. Так что тоже могу разговаривать на русском языке, хотя вот долго вот там в Крыму не были. But that's where we learned to speak isiZulu, even still today when my wife and I would like to discuss some private matters before the children. We do so in the Russian language. Very, very helpful. We also learned to speak the Ukrainian language, being very close to Russian. Not as good as Russian, but також можу розмовляти українською мовою. Це дуже гарна мова. Learn to eat some of the Ukrainian food and enjoy the hospitality of the people of that country. Also learned to speak to a certain degree the Crimean Tatar language, very interesting language, being part of the Turkic world, the Turkic group of languages. Kırım Tatar dilinde laf etmeyi istim, şunda aşçık bilem laf etmeyi Kırım Tatarca. Very interesting language. And that's basically what we learned to do during our time in the Ukraine. What was really beautiful and really wonderful was learning to speak the Russian language and finding a window open to the Slavic languages. Really amazing. Came back to South Africa, got started with the classical languages, Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, Hivrit, Tanachit, also the Latin language, and also classical Greek. Some other languages, some other projects, I think like many of you, little tidbits here, tidbits there. At university also did French special course on French and some other languages here and there. But that's basically my story and the love for languages that I have. I'd like to move on to the post-1994 linguistic reality of the country that I was born in, South Africa. So the post-94, the reason I make that a watershed moment is in 1994 the old system of apartheid was rejected by the majority of our people in South Africa, and a new dispensation started from there moving forwards. And this also had implications for the linguistic diversity of our country. So, not saying too much about what happened before 1994, having already said here and there something about that, I would like to say that during 1994, the dream, the idea was established that no, from now on, South Africa will have 11 official languages. And I think the dream was that no single language would be more important than the other languages. I already mentioned the languages to you, our 11 official languages. Just hearing that our country has 11 official languages might make some of you jealous, thinking about this language or that language, maybe in Spain or many other parts of the world that has not been given official status yet. Whereas South Africa, on paper and in our country's constitution, officially has 11 official languages. But what is the post-1994 linguistic reality of South Africa? And this might come as a bit of a surprise to some of you, but it seems as if what basically happened in our country was the following, where before 94 our country had two official languages of Afrikaans and English, and then in the different what some refer to as the Bantustans, you had isiZulu, isiXhosa, and so forth, the other languages of our beautiful country. Our country in effect has actually moved from two official languages to having only one, practically speaking, official language. And that is what I referred to earlier as Globish, English. There are many reasons that one can give for this, and I'm sure there are many studies that one can embark upon to understand why this has happened. But this is really what has happened in our country. This does not mean that the rich linguistic diversity of our country is not a reality. It still is real. It still holds immense benefits for any person in South Africa to be multilingual, but in effect the global pressure of the English language, and I think also to a degree our people in South Africa's desire to connect with the rest of the world has brought quite a number of them to turn their backs on their own mother tongues and to embrace Globish. So this is the practical reality. I'm sure I have fellow South Africans that will differ with me on this point, and I think it will make for a good discussion. But for you at the International Polyglot Conference, this is my view of what has happened in South Africa. Given this fact that English has been embraced by many as almost like some kind of a messiah, this has brought immense pressure on the survival of what we call in South Africa Ulimi Lwebele. This is going to sound strange to you, okay? So I'm warning you beforehand. The isiZulu expression Ulimi Lwebele means the language of the breast, okay? This is the language that the babies of our countries imbibe almost by suckling this language from their mother's breasts. This is the way our people refer to the mother tongue in South Africa. Lelimi la lutshwele, goba polelo ya lutshwele, the language of the breast. Great pressure on the mother tongues of our people. I'm not referring to people who have actually English as their mother tongue. We have a couple of million people in our country of South Africa who have actually the English language as their mother tongue, but we are speaking especially of those languages in our country that differ from English, then the languages that I mentioned to you earlier. So immense pressure in different ways. Pressure in terms of these languages to thrive. Pressure also of retaining their own vocabulary. This is interesting. As English increases in popularity in a country, the pressure on the colloquial and local languages is also such that speakers of the local languages start borrowing more from the English languages, drawing these words into their own languages and forgetting or rejecting internal words, so to speak, from their own languages, rejecting those and borrowing more and more from the English language. So, speaking about the post-linguistic reality of what is happening in South Africa. Just by the way, a couple of months ago I spoke to a very well-known writer in our country, in South Africa, and I asked him, Mfoit, my brother, what are you saying about the mother tongue in South Africa? What are your views? What do you think? And he was not optimistic. He said, hey, Mfoit, gunzima. Hey, my brother, it's difficult. It's difficult. So, great challenges ahead for those who want to revive Ulimi Lwebele in our country of South Africa, the language of the breast, to revive the mother tongue. A little bit more about that a bit later, when at this Polyglot conference I would like to speak directly to our leaders in Africa, if I am afforded this opportunity to do so. Representing South Africa and also to a lesser degree the continent of Africa, I would like to take that opportunity to speak to our people in South Africa, and to the degree that those on the other side of my country's borders are willing to listen, also to address them in the isiZulu language. So, the post-linguistic reality of our country, South Africa. Introducing the richness of our country, and specifically the linguistic richness of South Africa. I would like to say that when speaking about the languages of South Africa, there is just so much poetic, there is just so much richness in the languages of our country. Let me give you just one example, or maybe it would be a good thing for me to give you the greeting in our different languages. Some of them overlap with the others. Just firstly, we have a number of language families. Let me start out with what we call the Nguni family of languages. The Nguni family of languages, this family comprises of 4 languages: isiZulu, isiXhosa, isiSwati, and isiNdebele. This means that if you learn to speak any one of these languages from the Nguni family of languages, it would be very easy for you to understand the other 3. And it would also be easy for you to jump from the one language to the other languages to learn to speak those. In actual fact, that's how I learned to speak the isiXhosa language. I started out with isiZulu, and from there I was able to transition to the isiXhosa language. So, isiZulu. In isiZulu we greet by saying, and you've heard this earlier in my talk, sawubona. Sawubona. We have seen you. This is to one person singular. You say sawubona. In isiXhosa we greet by saying molo. When you greet one person, you say molo. When you greet more than one person in isiXhosa, you say molweni. Molweni mawethu. Greetings, my people. Molweni mawethu. In isiSwati, that would be very similar to isiZulu. Sanibonani bagwethu. Sanibonani bagwethu. In isiNdebele, lotshani. Lochani. Interestingly, the word locha, to greet, in isiNdebele was borrowed from the Sepedi language. Rolocha was borrowed from another family of languages, but in isiNdebele, lochani. So, the Nguni family of languages. Then we have another family of languages called the Sotho language of family of languages, and that would be Sepedi, Setswana, and Sesotho. And then very interestingly, this is very interesting, there's a Sotho language, a language that belongs to this family that is not part of South Africa. Okay, this is very interesting. This language is the Lozi language from southwest Zambia. Okay, check that out. This is very interesting. People who fled from southern Africa up into Africa and they settled in Zambia, the Lozi language. Just very interesting. It's not one of the languages of South Africa, but linguistically it is related, it's very, very close to the Sesotho language, So, Sepedi, greeting in Sepedi, Tobelang, Tobelang Bareshu. Greetings, my people, Tobelang Bareshu. Setswana, Dumelang Bachaetsu. The Setswana language is very, very interesting. The people love using their lips when they speak Setswana. When you listen to the radio station of Setswana, it's really interesting how the Matswana, how they speak. Dumelang Bachaetsu, they speak with their lips. It's very interesting. Whereas the Sepedi people, they like speaking more in the back of their throats. Aha, aha. The Sepedi language, but both languages related and belonging to the same family of languages. And then Sesotho, the language of Qwaqwa, in the Free State province of our country, and then also of Lesotho, and the language related to the Lozi language that I told you about from southwest Zambia, the Sesotho language. Interestingly, the only Sotho language that has click sounds in the language itself. The history of that is another story. Okay, so Sesotho, Khotso motswalle, Khotso motswalle. Okay, greeting in Sesotho, beautiful, similar to Hebrew. Okay, in Hebrew you say shalom. In Sesotho they say khotso. They also greet by saying peace, my friend. Khotso motswalle, khotso. Okay, peace. Then we have the Tshivenda language. This is a very interesting language, very interesting, with interesting sounds. Greeting, the greeting differs in the morning, afternoon, and in the evening. In the morning, dimachuroni konanianga. Good morning, my friend. Dimachuroni konanianga. Nditoto amba Tshivenda ringwe doba. Nditoto amba Tshivenda dichi erera. Zvino ndikoringetsa fedzi. One day I will speak Tshivenda fluently. At this stage, I'm only learning. Right, that's Tshivenda. Many people in our country say that Tshivenda must be the most difficult language. I'm not sure that it's the most difficult. I think people find Tshivenda to be difficult because geographically speaking, the Venda people are up in the north of our country, and they are not such a numerous group of people, so they are isolated in a certain sense to the north of our country, and hence the reason for their language not being learned so many people in our country. A beautiful language, the language of the Mavenda, the Machoroni, Bashu, Dikuine, Uamba, Ruvenda, Aichiku, Yuzron. My people, it's wonderful to speak our language, not English. Great stuff. Right, then another language, the language of Xitsonga. Xitsonga, also a very interesting language. It's all on its own, like Tshivenda, almost like a linguistic island. Okay, some words borrowed from the other languages, Tshivenda, but it's on its own as a language. And then also the Xitsonga language. Xitsonga is typified by a kind of a whistle. There's something of a whistle to the language when the people speak it, like the word for now in Xitsonga, shwe. Let me just get my lips right on this. Now, the word for now, in the morning, Avsheni shagaramina, bzirini wutomi, haringetela shagaramina. Good morning, my friend. How are things? How's life? No, we're trying. Haringetela. Rimanasiko, Ntadiwa, ula Xitsonga, go fu. One day I will speak Xitsonga in a great way. Go fu. Hitsakile shagaramina. I'm glad, my friend. Okay, this is the Tsonga language, ladies and gentlemen. Really an interesting language, a very interesting culture. People still in the parts where they speak deep Xitsonga, very traditional, very interesting musical style of Xitsonga. We also have English, the language that I've been speaking up to this point mostly. A couple of million people, about 2 to 3 million people have English as their mother tongue in South Africa, also opening a window to the rest of the world, to many of the people of our country. Interestingly, about South African English, it is not exactly the same as the English of Britain. Okay, some words have been absorbed into the English of South Africa, like the word braai. How's it going, you guys? Are we going to go for a braai? A braai is what the Americans call a barbecue, to go for a barbecue, a word borrowed from Afrikaans. Some other words also borrowed by people. I'm not sure whether all will agree on this, but you know, the way our people speak in South Africa, they'd say, hey, I'll sommer give you a klap, man, against your kop. I'll just give you a smack against your head. Words absorbed from the culture around us. Here in South Africa, South African English, if you listen to the accent, being oriented more towards the English from Great Britain than towards the English of America. Also the mother tongue of a number of million people in our country of South Africa. And then my own mother tongue, the language I grew up with, Afrikaans. 'n taal wat interessant is op baie verskillende vlakke. Een spesifieke saak wat ek graag vir julle sal wil noem is dat die Afrikaanse taal is een van omtrent net 4 tale wat in die 20ste eeu uitgebou kon word tot 'n wêreldtaal. Die ander tale wat dit dan ook kon regkry is die taal van Hindi in Indië, die taal van Hebreeus in Israel, en dan ook die taal, die Malay taal, as ek reg onthou, dan van Maleisië en die area daar. Spesifiek dan daardie 4 tale, maar dan die Afrikaanse taal wat ook uitgebou is tot 'n wêreldtaal. Dit beteken dat daar niks is in die realiteit van hierdie wêreld en van die lewe wat ons leef wat jy nie kan uitdruk in die Afrikaanse taal nie. So, introducing the linguistic richness of my country, South Africa. I would now like to speak to my fellow friends and fellow leaders in the country of South Africa to encourage them to start reviving the mother tongue in our country of South Africa. And to the degree that friends and fellow Africans on this continent of ours are willing to listen to me, I would like to encourage also friends on the other side of the borders of South Africa, some of our Swahili friends in East Africa, Jambo, Abari, Muzuri Sana, Rafiki Yanga, other friends in Botswana, up to Nigeria, the languages of the DRC, Lingala, the languages in Rwanda, languages in Central Africa, the beautiful languages all over sub-Saharan Africa. I have a friend, a Fulani friend, Ajaramo Minyang, Miyehi. That was a bit of Fulani for you. My friend speaking Yoruba in Nigeria, Ikaro. Greeting my friends in the morning there from Nigeria. All our friends on the other side of the borders of South Africa. A word of encouragement to our people in Africa, but focused specifically on the leaders of our country in South Africa. Sanibonani bakwethu, ngicela ukukhuluma kancane nje nani lana ngisho wezakhamizi zakithi lana eningizimu lase-Afrika. Ngicela ukuthi nilalelisise kahle bakwethu. Akunjalo ukuthi sesifikile isikhathi sokuthi sivuselele ulimi lwebele. Akunjalo yini ukuthi sesifikile isikhathi sokuthi siqale ukuvuselela ulimi lwethunga, ngisho ulimi lukaMthaniya, ngisho ulimi lukamama, ngisho ulimi lwenkululeko. Hawu, kwaze kube nini sizokhuluma izilimi zabanye, sishiye amagugu ethu, sishiye ulimi lwebele eceleni, singalugqiziqakala ulimi lwebele bakwethu? Uyakwazi ukuya eGermany, yonke into yenziwa ngesiJalimane. Uyakwazi ukuya eFrance, kwenziwa yonke into ngesiFulentshi, kanti mawufike eningizimu lase-Afrika kukhulunywa ulimi olulodwa vo. Hawu, sizawuthini madoda? Yebo, ilimi lezo zisadingekile, ngisho isiNgisi, isiFulentshi, isiPortuguese, njalo njalo. Ingane zethu mazizifunde nalezo zilimi. Kodwa-ke bakwethu, ngithi vuselelani ulimi lwebele bareshu kiri. Kiakopela irithome gore re bolele polelo ya reshu, irithome gore re bolele dipolelo tša reshu. Re ska ba na le ditlhong ka polelo. Let us revive the mother tongue in our country of South Africa. Let us revive that which is our own. This is my call to the leaders of our beautiful country of South Africa. Lastly, my invitation to you, fellow polyglots, and to you, fellow students of languages, attending this most interesting and most amazing International Polyglot Conference 2020. Here is my invitation to you. You like studying languages? You're interested in different cultures around the world. You enjoy eating the food of this culture and that culture. Listen, I'm inviting you to the continent of Africa. This is where I was born. This is where my forefathers are buried. This is where my forefathers started their own lives and made a space for themselves down here. This is where we met the beautiful peoples of Southern Africa. So I'm inviting you, as a representative of my own country and the linguistic diversity of South Africa, come and visit us. Come over. I know there are some polyglots that have already started out learning to speak the languages of South Africa. Ask them about it. It's a most interesting journey to undertake. Ngithi, zaneni kithi, nifunde ilimi zethu. Itla, lithuthe dipolelo tša gešo. Re a lemema, re itla. Ons nooi julle uit na Suid-Afrika toe. Kom na ons en leer om ons tale te praat. Мы говорим, приезжайте сюда, в Южную Африку. И для того, чтобы учиться говорить в наших языках. Это будет здорово. Спасибо вам большое. Merci beaucoup. Vielen Dank. Toda raba. Kialeboha. Siyabonga kakhulu. Bye danki. Thank you.